This is Steve Zeltzer with KPFA WorkWeek Radio, and I'm with Steve Hill, who is a writer, journalist, and has been investigating the Uber, Lyft phenomenon, these platforms, and what they mean for the working people and the future of them. Welcome to WorkWeek Radio.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
Steve, why don't you talk about this? It's going to be a protest tomorrow of drivers, a strike, and also the planned IPO with the purported value of $90 billion?
Yeah, I mean, we've really come full circle with this company and ride-hailing, ride-sharing, as they call it, haven't we? I mean, how many years ago was it people were hailing this as the new revolution? This is going to be the way transportation is going to work. This is going to be the way we're all going to find work, and the work will just come to us. You can just drive for it. And now we know the reality of what this business is. It's basically, first of all, it's riding on the backs of its workers, because the workers are. There was a study done recently coming out of Stanford University and MIT. It found that these workers, on average, don't even make minimum wage, especially once you subtract their own expenses for driving their own car, which are considerable. The workers have no autonomy on the platform. You can be cut off that platform without notice if Uber doesn't like what you're doing. There was an example recently where, a few thousand drivers were cut off the platform because they were refusing certain rides that were short. Because if you're an experienced driver, you know that you don't make money on short rides because Uber tacks on so many little fees, a safe riders fee and all these sorts of things. You only make money on longer rides. And so drivers, when they start feeling like, oh, this is going to be a short ride, they just say, no, I'm not going to do that ride. And because their acceptance rate was too low, a couple thousand of them got cut off the platform without any notice at all. And then their right of appeal, there is no appeal, there's no unions, there's nothing like this. So these are the crummiest jobs of the future, and they're happening right now. So labor is bankrupt when it comes to Uber. Let's look at the environment. Has anyone noticed that traffic has gotten so bad with all these Uber and Lyft cars riding around San Francisco and in the Bay Area? I mean, what do you expect? You take a dense urban environment, you introduce into that environment another several thousand cars, and what do you expect is going to happen? In San Francisco, they did a study not that long ago. They found out that there are about 1,800 regular traditional taxi cabs in San Francisco, and at any one time, there are 9,000 Uber and Lyft cars. There are 5 times as many Uber and Lyft cars as there are regular taxis. They have completely flooded the streets, and as a result, everyone is sitting in the traffic now with all these cars that are on the streets. So in so many ways like this, Uber has been just a terrible addition to the urban environment. I mean, what it does show us is that we need more public transportation that is good quality transportation. I mean, I'm totally sympathetic to people who, they get on Muni and it's not reliable, it's not fast, sometimes it's dangerous, and then also there weren't enough taxi cabs in the streets before. The 1,800 wasn't enough to service demand. They could have doubled that and it would have helped out a lot instead of, having 9,000 Uber and Lyft cars. So we really need to look at the urban transportation situation and create good jobs where people can get to where they need to go, home and work and these sorts of things, on good, reliable transportation. And we don't have that now. And Uber and Lyft are not the answer to the problems that we have, not today, not tomorrow, not for the next 10 years.
And they call themselves the disruptors. They have ignored regulation, and basically the politicians have allowed them to destroy the taxi industry and basically run roughshod over any kind of rules and regulations. This disruption of the rules and laws, which has kind of been acquiesced by the politicians, it seems like they're really running the political show.
Absolutely. In the book that I wrote about all this, the title of it is Raw Deal: How the Uber Economy and Runaway Capitalism Are Screwing American Workers. I go into how the politicians really have kowtowed to Uber. I mean, Uber, they actually changed their name from Uber to Uber Technology Company because they tried to say, look, we're not a transportation company. we're a technology company, and therefore the rules and laws of transportation shouldn't apply to us. We're just a platform that connects a driver to someone who wants a ride. And so they really tried to push this line for many years. They don't do it as much anymore, and it just doesn't fly. The reality is that one of the big mistakes that California did under Governor Jerry Brown, because we were one of the first states to try and regulate this, is we passed a law at the state level and made it so that cities couldn't adopt their own laws. We're at this point, we've been prevented in San Francisco and Oakland and other places from adopting our own local laws to regulate this. And so, the needs of San Francisco and Oakland are different than Fresno or Merced, and yet we're all governed by this one state law instead of having the ability of cities like San Francisco to have its own law that is going to deal with the problems that Uber has created. And so this is a big problem. We need to change that state law so that San Francisco can regulate things the way it needs to be regulated. The local politicians here, Aaron Peskin and some of the others, they do realize the problems that are going on. They would like to figure out a way to regulate this in a better way, but they're prevented by this state law that Jerry Brown passed.
And the speculation that's going on, this IPO of $90 billion, you've got Silicon Valley who is going to make a lot of money. There are going to be more billionaires, more gentrification in San Francisco and the Bay Area. You have people in the streets, mentally ill, people defecating in the streets. You don't have housing for working class people. It sounds like this is dystopia gone wild right here at the center of Silicon Valley and the development of technology.
Absolutely. I've lived in San Francisco now for over 25 years, and I've seen this city in good times and bad, and I've never seen anything like what this city has become. At this point, it has become a dystopia. There is so much wealth here, and there's about to be a lot more, because once these IPOs hit, there's going to be a ton of people at these companies, Uber and Lyft, that are going to instantly be millionaires. And they're going to have all this money to spend on the same housing that you or I or anyone who is not a millionaire is looking to rent or to buy. And so you're just going to be outbid, as it's already been happening in a crazy way in the Bay Area for the last 5-6 years. It's just going to be that on steroids, even more. So it's really quite worrisome. The politicians really need to step in. I do see signs that the new San Francisco Board of Supervisors like Gordon Marr and Hillary Ronen and some others are, at least open to trying new things. But the amount of money that's being flooded into politics today is also creating a big problem. I was one of the people that worked to pass public financing of campaigns here in San Francisco, so that at least helps a little bit. But we've got a big battle here in San Francisco, and it's not going to go away anytime soon.
And there is going to be a strike that has been called for. Do the workers really have the power at Uber if they act collectively, and Lyft if they do act collectively?
The problem that they face is, there's a number of them, but one of them is a legal problem, because these drivers are defined in labor law, at least Uber thinks they are, as what's called independent contractors rather than regularly employed workers. And according to federal law, independent contractors are not allowed to organize a union. And so this has prevented these workers from being able to form a union. And also these workers are part of what's now called a distributed workforce. They don't work in any single workplace where they know each other and can find each other. They're spread out all over the place, so it becomes harder to organize because you don't even know who your fellow drivers are. They are meeting online to some degree on web boards and these sorts of things, and that helps to some degree. But this is a hard workforce to organize. And so there are a few things that we really need to do in order to help these workers to organize. One is California can change its law to make it easier for these workers to organize. There was recently a court ruling that ruled that these makes it easier to have these workers make a claim that they're actually regularly employed workers rather than independent contractors. So now the politicians at the state level need to step up and turn that legal ruling into an actual law that makes it easier for them to organize. But we also could demand and pass a law that says to Uber, look, you must give us the list of who your drivers are. So, and then that list can be made available to the drivers so they can find each other. It can be made available to labor unions so that unions can find them and try to organize these people. That's would be a big step in the right direction because, these workers deserve a decent wage for what they're doing. They deserve to have things like health care and, retirement, Social Security. And as an independent contractor, Uber doesn't have to pay for any of those things for these workers. That's not right, and it needs to be changed.
And many of these workers come in from hundreds of miles away, Los Angeles, the Central Valley. They sleep in their cars. You have the situation of the taxi cab drivers committing suicide, even Uber workers. It seems like the level of exploitation is becoming unbearable for more and more of the drivers.
Yes, I mean, and again, that's the testimony. So even though the unemployment rate is at record low levels, the quantity of jobs is high, but the quality of jobs is extremely low. Since the economic collapse in 2008, 2009, the quality of jobs has just steadily gotten worse and worse. And so as a result, you have drivers who are coming from Fresno and Merced and Modesto and these other places who are driving here into San Francisco where the tourists are, and they sleep in their cars. They drive around the city. They don't necessarily even know the city, so that's why you see so many of them doing crazy things on the street and double parking and blocking up traffic. It's just another sign of the economic distress that so many individuals and families are under, that people are working at these types of jobs. There was another recent study that found that they interviewed a bunch of Uber and Lyft drivers, and they found that these workers don't even know how much money they're earning. They don't realize that they're making less than minimum wage once they subtract their expenses. Most people, you work at your job, and you don't have huge expenses that go along with that job that you're working. But when you're driving your own car, and some of them have taken out loans that are facilitated by Uber at high rates of interest, and they think, I'll get a free car, free for now because you're taking out a loan, and I'll be able to drive that car when I'm working, when I'm not working. For a lot of low-income workers, this is a very attractive offer to be able to get a loan for a car that's backed up by Uber. But it's almost like, the old days of post-slavery, where these workers are now shopping at the company store because they're getting these high-interest loans and they're locked into them, and so then they're stuck paying back the loans on these cars. And once they start realizing, wow, after I subtract all my expenses, gas and parking and amortization of my loans on this car, I'm making barely minimum wage. Some of these workers, the study found, are actually losing money, and they don't know it. And suddenly they're locked into a loan that they can't even afford to pay back. This is not right. This is not how the new future of work, the digital economy, is supposed to work, and yet it's happening right here in San Francisco at the epicenter of Silicon Valley.
Why don't you talk about the real cost of these Uber rides?
Okay. A lot of people that use Uber and Lyft, and I understand why they do that. Look, the bus system, public transportation in San Francisco is not so good. There weren't enough taxis on the street for a while, so people were eager to have another alternative. I get that. But what they don't realize is that when you get in that Uber, you're only paying 50% of the cost of that ride. The rest of it is being paid by the venture capital funders, because what Uber is trying to do is they're using predatory pricing to drive the competition out of business. The competition being Lyft, taxi cabs, and also public transportation. That's a competitor for Uber and Lyft. And so, what we see now is the ridership on public transportation is down in San Francisco, in New York City, in every major city except for Seattle. Ridership is down because people are using Uber and Lyft. And I've talked to, some people I know who are regular users of it. This one guy, I asked him, I'm curious why you're taking Lyft in this case rather than taking public transportation. And he said, well, for me to take Lyft to my house from here, it's going to cost me about $5 and the bus will cost me $2.50. Yeah, it's more money, but it's affordable to me. So it's just so much more convenient. I'm going to do that. And I said to him, well, what if the cost for you to take that Lyft instead of being $5, what if it was $10? Because that's the real cost of that ride. He said, well, then I would take the bus. And so there you have it. Ridership is down. Revenue into the public transportation system is down because when Uber and the venture capital funders subsidize that ride, of course, people are going to take that. And you really can't blame them. But eventually, these companies are going to start raising the prices. They're going to have to because Uber just lost another $1 billion in the last 3 months of this year. Last year they lost about $2 billion. The year before that they lost about $4.6 billion. They've been losing billions of dollars every year because they're subsidizing all these rides. The ironic thing is, the more you use Uber, the more money it loses. That's not a business model that can survive.
Well, yeah, the BART extension to the airport, SFO, the BART extension to the Oakland airport, both of those are, I understand, are losing money because of Uber.
That's exactly right. We spent billions of dollars. Dianne Feinstein, Senator Feinstein, for years tried to get federal money to do that extension of BART to the airport. We finally got the money, built the extension, and it's losing money because, as anyone who has gone to the airport recently could see, there are just a ton of Uber and Lyfts like flies all over you-know-what driving around that airport because the rides, again, are subsidized. That's what people have to understand. And you can understand people saying, like, well, hey, if venture capital wants to subsidize my ride instead of taxpayers through the public transportation system, then I might as well take it. Okay, fine, but just recognize that the goal is to drive the competition out of business, and that competition includes public transportation. And once they've done that, then they are going to raise the prices. They're going to have to at least double those prices that you're paying now in order to get to profitability. In fact, double it will just get them to break even. They're going to have to more than double the price in order to get to profitability, and that is their goal. They are a profit-seeking company, and their venture capital funders are not going to put up with subsidizing your ride for that much longer. That's what the whole point of going public with an IPO is about, is now starting to get to the real world where they're going to have to get to a price point that brings them to profitability.
Okay, well, I want to thank you again. This is Steve Hill, and he's a writer, journalist, and has been covering digital economy and the Lyft and Uber platform. So thanks for joining us on WorkWeek Radio.
My pleasure, Steve.